Welcome to Complete Intro to SQL. I am Brian Holt, or Complete Intro to SQL. I know I'm going to get people upset about how to pronounce that. I will probably say both, because I have no consistency in my life, but that's between me and my therapist. Anyway, let's click on the introduction here. Oh, first of all, actually, I want you to go to sql.holt.courses. That'll take you to this website here. This is literally all of my course notes. This is everything I'm going to be teaching you today. I have two computers here because I teach from this one and I read from this one. I have my notes up here. So if you fall behind, or if you want to review something, or if you want to share this with your friend, this site is open and free forever. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to click on the introduction. Just to show you how this kind of works, up here in the top right, you see Welcome Introduction. This is the name of the section. This is the name of the lesson, so that if you jump ahead, or if you fall behind, or if you just want to know where I am, you can just see the Welcome Introduction, Welcome Introduction. It matches up so you can kind of use a breadcrumb to find where you are. And with that, let's get into the introduction to this course. My name is Brian Holt. I've taught too many courses here. I literally can't count how many times I've been here. And I want to teach you about SQL today. So SQL it's a language. It's not necessarily a programming language, though you'll see here in a little bit, you can kind of turn it into a programming language. But there's an incredible amount of depth here. And I think that makes it seem a little unapproachable to people. It seems like they have to learn this entire new programming language, but in reality, you can get, I would say, almost all the benefit of SQL with a very small subset of knowledge. Don't get me wrong, there's people that have decades of experience here that can do wild things with it. We're not going there today. I'm trying to get you something really, really practical. And I guess that's the kind of one of the first points I want to hammer on. This is a course for developers. I'm not going to teach you how to replicate. I'm not going to teach you how to deploy. I'm not going to teach you how to manage instances of Postgres. You want to learn that from like a DBA or from an ops person, and I am neither of those. What I am going to teach you today is if you're a developer and you want to write queries to an SQL database, or you need to create some tables, or you need to model some data, that's stuff that we're going to talk about today. So yeah, here's kind of some examples of things you're going to learn: how to set up databases and tables, what's going to go into your tables. We're going to write up just the smallest bit of Node.js today, because I actually wanted to get you your hands on code querying a database. If you don't know Node, that's fine. You can just kind of follow along. Those kinds of things. So who is this course for? It's for you, hopefully. The things that I'm going to suggest that you know before you take this course that'll be really helpful. Just internet fundamentals. There's a great course from Jen from Front of Masters that goes over like how the internet works and a bunch of stuff like that. It's very good to have that done first. Some basic coding abilities will be really helpful. If this is your very first coding class ever, that's going to be hard. It's probably still possible, to be honest with you, but it will be hard. And then a little Node.js would go a long ways. And I linked 3 different Front End Masters courses here for you to kind of brush up on those. Yeah.
What about GEMS Full Stack?
What about GEMS Full Stack course? I mean, it's a great course. I don't think you need to take it before you take this course, but you could. I guess Jem does talk like a little bit about Node.js, right?
He talks about everything, like how the internet works, basics of sysadmin, all those kinds of things.
Yeah. If you wanted to go more in that direction, certainly that course would be really helpful. So your setup, I have tested this both on Mac OS and on Windows 10. If it works on Windows 10, it should work on Windows 11. And if you're doing this on Linux, you probably already know everything I'm about to tell you, so you can just ignore me at this point. But you can just follow, I'm kidding, you can follow the Mac OS instructions and that'll work for Linux just fine. You won't need a particularly powerful computer for this. I would recommend about 8 gigs of RAM. That's probably the thing that's gonna like gate you the most, but you could probably do this on 4, or 2 would be hard, but you could probably do this on 4. You will need to use Docker. You don't have to know Docker. If you would like to know Docker, I teach a whole course on Docker for Front End Masters, but I will give you all the Docker instructions. This is not a Docker course. You do not have to use Visual Studio Code, though I will be using it, and I will show you a couple of tricks for it just throughout the course. I used to work on it, so I like it. People always ask me my setup, so I put it in here. But the font is Mona Lisa. I just use the default Dark Plus theme. I use iTerm 2, and then this VS Code icons extension. So if you want to come back later and you're wondering how I set things up, it's all linked there. Where to file issues, there is a repo here. So if you open this is the course website here. So here you can open issues, you can open pull requests. I'm going to ask you, if you have questions, don't message me, put them on the repo, because then later if someone else has the same question, they can Google it and find it in the repo. And pull requests are very welcome, particularly because I always have a ton of spelling and grammar mistakes in my courses. So there is another course on Front-End Masters, which I'll pull up really quick here, that I taught previously called Complete Intro to Databases. This is all still current and useful. This covers 4 different types of databases. This is more comparative of like, I'm thinking about this problem that I have, how should I model the data, right? And so it goes over an SQL database, which is Postgres, right? So this section here is going to largely overlap with what I'm going to teach today, but we're going to go into much more depth today. But this class also goes into graph databases, key value stores, as well as NoSQL databases. Specifically, it goes into MongoDB, Postgres. This is Neo4j, and then this is Redis. So this is much more like a higher level comparing, use NoSQL for these kinds of problems, use Postgres for these kinds of problems, use Redis for these kinds of problems, right? Whereas this class is specifically teaching you in-depth SQL so that you can, work with an SQL. You've already decided to use an SQL database. This one's going to help you choose that you want to use an SQL database, if that makes any sense. My name's Brian, and I work at Stripe. Specifically at Stripe, I am the product owner of the Stripe SDKs, the Stripe VS Code extension, the Stripe React Native experience, the CLI, a bunch of developer tools, right? So that's kind of the theme of my entire career. For the most part, I've worked on developer tools. Previous to being at Stripe, I worked on VS Code, and I worked on Azure. I was the owner of JavaScript on Azure. And then before that, I was a Node.js and JavaScript front-end developer for like a decade. I worked at LinkedIn, Netflix, Reddit. I started teaching at Front-End Masters when I worked at Reddit, so that's been, we're coming up on a decade of me teaching at Front-End Masters, which is crazy to think about. I've written a lot of code and queries over the years. I started coding probably around when I was 10. My brother made me write code before he'd let me play video games, so I'm both still upset at my brother and also thankful, because here I am. But I'm going to tell you right now that you can learn these skills at like any point, right? You can be 60 and starting this, you can be 5 and you can be starting this. I don't know, 5. I don't know if I'm going to teach my 5-year-old how to write queries in SQL. I don't know, maybe if he's bad. When I really started writing a lot of serious SQL was my internship, where I had to like query these, really archaic and weird databases using SQL, which taught me a lot. And then over the years at Reddit, I wrote a lot of queries. At Netflix, it's kind of been a theme throughout all my career to use SQL and various incantations. I didn't really start using Postgres until I worked at Reddit. Before that, it was mostly MySQL. But you'll see that while most of the things that we're going to talk about today are very specific to Postgres, a lot of these skills are generally applicable across all and any SQL databases. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. I live in Seattle. I like to travel, hang out with my wife and my new kid. And yeah, that's me. Feel free to catch up with me on social media. All my links are there. And the last thing I always ask people is, if you can give this repo a star, it helps people find it, which is cool. It also pads my ego, which needs help sometimes.
What's the secret of mastering all these skills like databases and front-end development?
That's a good question. The theme of my career is I've worked all over the stack, right? I went all the way from working on pure front-end applications sometimes. I did that at Reddit and at Netflix, all the way to working on lower levels of the stack and doing back-end stuff. I did that at like LinkedIn and also at Netflix, all the way down to I worked on cloud infrastructure at Microsoft. right? And now I do product management stuff and business stuff at Stripe. And the thing that's been critical to my success and me learning all these various different tools is that I learn by teaching, and that's just kind of my learning style. When you are forced, or when you're teaching, you are forced to kind of reduce your knowledge down to a common vocabulary between the person that you're trying to communicate with, which means that you have to break down these things that you kind of hand wave over in your brain, and like you have to kind of open the box and see what's inside of it and understand really those primitives, because you know people are going to ask you questions and you have to kind of provide for those questions in advance. So in other words, a lot of it's from experience, and secondly, I've taught a lot of people, both teaching workshops to my coworkers and doing front-end masters and doing conference workshops. Doing all of that teaching really helps solidify these kind of basic primitives in my brain that I use to build back up into more complicated, higher level things.
Should I take the Intro to Databases course before this?
No.
Or?
No, so the Complete Intro to Databases, like I said, it's kind of a different approach to a similar thing, where it kind of teaches you how to model problems and what kind of database to use for each one of them. This one has no dependency on Complete Intro to Databases. This is its own thing, so you do not have to take that one before. In fact, if you take this one before, for the most part, you could probably skip the SQL section in the other one. This one is going to have more depth than the Complete Intro to Databases one. Yeah, Dustin.
Do I have to download Docker for this course?
You must download Docker in this course, and it's literally the next section.